Commander Lee Hannah pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the observation deck and felt the vibrations travel through her bones. Below, the massive mining drills carved into the asteroid's surface like hungry beasts, their diamond-tipped, heads spinning at impossible speeds. Sparks flew in brilliant arcs through the artificial atmosphere. Casting dancing shadows across the faces of her crew, 40 human workers moved like ants through the excavation site. Their environmental suits, bulky and patched from years of use. They had been drilling for 6 months straight, pulling trilithium ore from the heart of this dead rock floating in the void between stars. The ore glowed with a soft blue light that made it beautiful to look at, but Hannah knew its true purpose. Every gram they extracted would power the weapons and ships that kept humanity in chains. "Commander, you need to see this," Park Min-ho said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. He slid a datapad across the scratched metal table, the screen flickering with maintenance warnings that would never be fixed. New orders from the overseers. Hannah picked up the pad and read the message twice, hoping she had misunderstood. The quota had been increased again, 20% more or expected each month, with no additional equipment, no extra workers, no improved safety measures. Just the same exhausted humans working longer hours in increasingly dangerous conditions. Above them, separated by reinforced glass and climate control systems, the Kethmari overseers watched with their large, luminous eyes. They were beautiful. In the way that ice sculptures were beautiful, tall and graceful, with skin so pale it seemed translucent. Their flowing robes never showed dirt or wear, and their hands never touched anything rougher than silk. They observed human labor the way scientists might watch bacteria through a microscope, with detached interest and no emotional investment. "How are we supposed to meet this quota?" Min-ho asked, running his hand through his graying hair. "We're already pushing the equipment beyond safety limits. The atmospheric processors are failing, the drilling supports are cracking, in half." The crew is working double shifts. Hannah stared at the numbers on the screen. 300 years of this. 300 years of humanity serving the hegemony's needs while being told it was for their own good. When the Kethmari had first arrived at Earth, they had come with gifts and promises. They spoke of a galaxy filled with wonders, of technologies that could cure disease and end hunger, of a peaceful confederation of species working together for the common good. But humans were different, they explained. Humans were violent. Humans were unpredictable. Humans had fought wars among themselves, had destroyed their own environment, had shown aggression toward other species. The galaxy was not ready for such beings to walk freely among the stars. However, the Kethmari were merciful. They offered humanity a path to redemption, through honest labor, through service to the greater good. Through acceptance of their guidance, humans could earn their place in galactic society. It would take time, perhaps centuries, but eventually humanity would be civilized enough to join the hegemony as equals. The story had been so reasonable, so logical. And humanity, exhausted from their own wars and environmental disasters, had accepted it gratefully. They had welcomed the Kethmari as saviors, as teachers, as benevolent guardians, who would guide them to a better future. Now, 3 centuries later, Hannah wondered if that future would ever come. She had grown up hearing stories of the old days, when humans lived on green worlds under open skies. Her parents had died in the processing plants of Kepler 452b. Her sister had been lost in a mining accident on Proxima Centauri, and just last week, her younger brother Kim, Jun-ho, had been crushed in a tunnel collapse that could have been prevented with proper safety equipment. The Kethmari had attended Jun-ho's memorial service. Of course, they always did. They spoke beautiful words about sacrifice and service, about how his death contributed to the greater good of the galaxy. They offered their condolences with the same serene expressions they wore while watching humans work themselves to death in their minds. "Commander," a voice crackled over the communication system. "We have a problem in Tunnel 7. The support beams are showing stress fractures." Hannah closed her eyes. More problems, more dangers, more chances for her people to die. While the Kethmari watched from their safe platforms above, she looked up at the observation windows where the overseers stood, their perfect faces unmarked by concern or emotion. They call it mercy, she whispered to herself, remembering the words spoken at Junho's funeral. They call it forgiveness. But as she watched her people risk their lives for a quota that would never be enough, as she thought about the 3 centuries of broken promises and empty hope, Hannah felt something new growing inside her chest. It was not gratitude for the Kethmari's mercy. It was not acceptance of their forgiveness. It was anger, cold and sharp as the space between stars. And for the first time in her life, Hannah began to wonder if the galaxy's most violent species might not be human after all. The dead world of Kepler 4-4 spun slowly in the darkness. Its surface scarred by ancient impacts and endless radiation. No wind had blown across its rocky plains for millions of years. No rain had fallen. No living thing had ever called it home. It was perfect for mining operations because there was nothing to destroy, nothing to protect, nothing to consider except the valuable minerals buried deep beneath its crust. Hannah's mining ship hung in orbit like a metal spider. Its drilling arms extended toward the planet's surface. For 3 weeks, her crew had been working around the clock, boring deep holes into the rock and extracting the rare elements that powered the hegemony's technology. The work was dangerous and exhausting, but it was also routine. They had done this hundreds of times before, on dozens of dead worlds. Specialist Choi Ji-won was operating drill number 7 when her equipment suddenly stopped. The massive boring head, which had been chewing through solid rock for hours, came to a complete halt 60 meters below the surface. Warning lights flashed across her control panel, and error messages scrolled across her screen. "Commander, you need to see this?" Gi-won called over the communication system, her voice tight with confusion. "The drill hit something, but it's not rock. It's not metal either. I've never seen readings like this." Hannah made her way down to the drilling platform, where Gi-won was staring at her instruments with a puzzled expression. The drill had stopped completely, its diamond-tipped head unable to penetrate whatever lay beneath the surface. What are we looking at?" Hannah asked. "I don't know," Ji-won replied, adjusting her scanner settings. "The material is incredibly dense, but it's not showing up as any known mineral. It's almost like the drill hit empty space, but that doesn't make sense 60 meters underground." Dr. Yoon Tae-yoon, their geology specialist, arrived with a portable analysis unit. He was a quiet man who had spent his entire career studying rocks and minerals, but even he looked confused as he examined the readings. "We need to go down there," he said, after several minutes of studying the data. "Whatever this is, it's not natural." It took them 6 hours to create a safe tunnel down to the anomaly. When they finally reached the bottom, their headlamps revealed something that made them all stop and stare. The drill had broken through into a vast underground chamber, its walls covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own inner light. "How is this possible?" Minho whispered, his voice echoing in the empty space. "This planet has been dead for millions of years. There's no way anyone could have built this." The chamber stretched beyond their lights, filled with crystalline formations that hummed with a low musical tone. The walls were covered in symbols that had not been carved or painted, but somehow grown into the stone itself. They flowed across the surface like living things, changing color as the humans moved there. Lights across them. Dr. Tyen ran his scanner over the nearest crystal formation and gasped at the readings. "These are data storage matrices," he said, his voice barely audible. "Ancient ones, pre-hegemony. They're still active." For 3 days, they worked to decode the information stored in the crystals. The technology was unlike anything they had ever seen, but it was also familiar in ways that made them uncomfortable. When the holographic display finally stabilized, showing star charts and historical records, Hannah felt her entire understanding of the universe begin to crumble. The records told a story that was nothing like the history they had been taught. They showed a galaxy filled with dozens of species living in peaceful cooperation, sharing technology and resources, exploring the stars together, and there, clearly visible in the star charts and historical documents, were human colonies among the stars. "This can't be right," Minho said, staring at the images of human ships flying alongside alien vessels. "We were told humans started the war. We were told we were too violent for space. But the records were clear and detailed. Humanity had not started any war. They had been part of a peaceful confederation of species that had existed for thousands of years before the hegemony's rise to power. The confederation had been based on cooperation and mutual respect, with each species contributing their unique abilities to the common good. The war had begun when the hegemony demanded that all species surrender their independence and accept hegemony rule. Most had refused, believing they could negotiate a peaceful solution. They had been wrong. The hegemony had attacked without warning, using weapons and tactics that the peaceful confederation had never imagined. One by one, the species had fallen. Their worlds had been conquered, their people enslaved, their histories rewritten. The hegemony had turned victims into villains, claiming that each species had been too violent, too dangerous, too unpredictable for civilized society. They had offered mercy and forgiveness for crimes that had never been committed. The forgiveness, Hannah said, her voice hollow with realization. It was never real. None of it was real. The truth was there in the ancient records, preserved in crystal matrices that had waited millions of years for someone to find them. Humanity had not been saved by the hegemony. They had been conquered, broken, and enslaved. And every word of gratitude they had ever spoken, every moment of shame they had felt for their supposed violent nature, had been built on lies. The message arrived at 0347 hours, hidden in the routine mining frequency reports that pass between asteroid facilities every day. To anyone listening, it sounded like standard equipment updates and/or production numbers. But buried in the technical data was a coded sequence that made Hannah's hands shake as she decoded it. Other human commanders had made similar discoveries. Other crews had found evidence of the hegemony's lies. What had started as isolated incidents was revealing itself as a pattern of deception spanning 3 centuries. The coded messages bounced between 12 different systems, passed along by mining crews, transport pilots, and maintenance workers. Each message told the same story in different words. Ancient ruins found on dead worlds. Data crystals containing historical records. Evidence that humanity had never been the violent species the hegemony claimed they were. Commander Kim De-ho from the Jupiter mining platforms had found weapon blueprints. Hidden in asteroid caverns, Dr. Song Minji from the research stations had discovered that human DNA samples in hegemony databases had been altered to support their claims about human aggression. Engineer Park Ji-soo from the Outer Rim colonies had uncovered communication logs, proving the hegemony had deliberately caused accidents to keep human populations small and manageable. Each discovery painted a clearer picture of the truth. Hegemony had not saved humanity from themselves. It had conquered them, enslaved them, spent 3 centuries convincing them to be grateful for their chains. The abandoned mining station of Vega 7 floated in the darkness between 2 dead stars, its hull scarred by decades of meteor impacts. It had been decommissioned years ago when the mineral deposits ran out, but its communication arrays still functioned, and its location made it perfect for secret meetings. Hannah's ship docked with the station carefully, using minimal power to avoid detection. The interior was cold and dark, filled with the smell of recycled air and rust. Emergency lighting cast long shadows down. Empty corridors where hundreds of human workers had once lived and died. Commander Kang Saiyajin was waiting in the old command center, his face marked by years of dangerous salvage work in the Outer Rim colonies. A plasma burn across his left cheek had left him partially blind in one eye, but his remaining eye burned with an intensity that made him seem younger than his 50 years. "The outer colonies are worse than you know," he said without greeting. "They're not just mining operations anymore. They're prisons. Humans are locked in underground facilities, never seeing daylight, never knowing if their families are alive or dead." Dr. Im Hae-jin arrived an hour later, her research station uniform still bearing the hegemony symbols that she had worn for 15 years. She was thin and pale from working in underground laboratories, but her mind was sharp and her hatred of the hegemony burned like a cold fire. "I've been studying their system since I was assigned to the weapons development program," she said, spreading technical schematics across the metal table. "Their ships, their weapons, their communication networks, they're not as advanced as they pretend to be. Most of their technology is stolen from the species they've conquered. The fourth member of their group was not human at all. It's the being called itself Zekthar, and it belonged to a species called the Vorthok. It looked like a giant insect with multiple arms and compound eyes, but it spoke in perfect human language and moved with a grace that suggested intelligence far beyond its appearance. The Vorthok remembers, Zekthar said, its voice producing harmonics that made the air vibrate. We kept the old songs, the true stories. Your people were not the first to be broken this way. The creature explained that the Vorthok had been conquered. 2 centuries before humanity, their hive worlds destroyed, and their people scattered across the galaxy as slave labor. But unlike humans, some Vorthok had maintained their cultural memory through secret songs and hidden rituals. There were dozens of species before you, Zekthar continued. Each one was told they were too violent, too dangerous, too unpredictable for civilized society. Each one was offered mercy and forgiveness for crimes they never committed. The hegemony has used the same lies for 1,000 years. Dr. Hajin pulled out a data crystal and inserted it into the station's computer system. A holographic display showed technical specifications for hegemony warships, their weapon systems, their communication networks, but the designs were familiar in disturbing ways. This is human technology, she said, pointing to the ship's power core. And this is Vorthok navigation systems. This weapon array is from the Kalari Empire that fell 3 centuries ago. Hegemony doesn't create anything new. It is steal from the species they conquer and combine it into new forms. How long do we have? Hannah asked, studying the technical readouts. Seojin's expression grew darker. The Hegemony Council is planning mass relocations, so they want to move human populations to the outer void, where communication between colonies will be impossible. They're calling it the next phase of human development. It's not development, Zekthar said. Its compound eyes reflecting the dim light. It's extermination. They've done this before. When a species becomes too numerous or too educated, they scatter. Them 2 isolated worlds where they can never organize resistance. The 4 beings sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 3 centuries of lies pressing down on them. But in that silence, something new was being born. Not acceptance, not gratitude, not the patient hope that had sustained humanity for so long. It was rebellion. The rebellion began at exactly 0300 Standard Galactic Time, when 17 different star systems erupted into coordinated chaos. Across the galaxy, mining ships that had spent decades pulling ore from dead rocks suddenly revealed hidden weapon modifications. Transport vessels that had carried human workers to their assignments transformed into assault craft. Communication networks that had carried nothing but boring mining reports for years suddenly coordinated military strikes with precision that shocked the hegemony. Hannah stood on the bridge of her converted mining ship, watching the tactical display. As her makeshift fleet approached the hegemony garrison at Wolf 359, 6 months of secret. Preparation had led to this moment. Her mining vessel had been gutted and rebuilt, its ore processing equipment replaced with weapon systems that Dr. Imhajin had designed using stolen hegemony technology. All ships report ready, announced Communications Officer Lee Suyan, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what they were about to do. Around them, 12 other converted ships held formation, their hulls still bearing the scars of mining work, but now bristling with hidden weapons, the hegemony. Garrison hung in space like a crystal flower, its elegant spires and graceful curves, designed to inspire awe in the species that served it. For 3 centuries, humans had looked upon such stations with reverence, seeing them as symbols of the advanced civilization that had lifted them from their violent nature. Now Hannah saw them for what they truly were, prisons disguised as palaces, built with the labor of enslaved species to house their oppressors. Target their communication arrays first, Hannah ordered, her voice carrying across the bridge. We take away their ability to call for help. Then we disable their orbital platforms. The Kethmari defenders were caught completely off guard.
There.
Sensors had detected the approaching ships, but they appeared to be standard mining vessels on routine supply runs. The garrison's automated systems had logged them as friendly contacts, and allowed them to approach without challenge. When the first salvo of human weapons struck the station's communication towers, alarms began wailing throughout the hegemony facility. The elegant Kathmari officers scrambled to their battle stations, their usual serene composure shattered by the impossible sight of human ships attacking them. "They're trying to raise their shields," reported Tactical Officer Kim Young-ho, his fingers dancing across his control panel. "But our timing is perfect. Their defensive systems are still activating." The human fleet moved with surgical precision, each ship knowing exactly where to strike. Dr. Higgins' intelligence had been perfect. The hegemony's weapons were powerful, but slow to activate, designed to deal with large-scale invasions rather than surprise attacks from within their own territory. One by one, the garrison's orbital platforms went dark. Their weapon systems failed. Their shields collapsed, and their communication arrays fell silent. In less than 20 minutes, the most powerful hegemony fortress in the Wolf 359 system had been reduced to a crippled hulk floating in space. "Incoming transmission from Hegemony Command," Lee Suyan announced, her voice tight with anticipation. The main display flickered to life, showing the familiar face of High Counselor Vethmer. His translucent skin seemed to glow with inner light, and his large eyes regarded Hannah with an expression of patient disappointment. Even now, facing armed rebellion, he maintained the same serene composure that had convinced humans to accept slavery as salvation. "Commander Hannah," he said, his voice carrying the musical tones that had once seemed so beautiful to human ears, "we understand your frustration. Perhaps we have been too strict in our guidance. We are prepared to offer greater freedoms, better working conditions. There is no need for this violence." Hannah felt her crew turn to look at her, waiting for her response. For 3 centuries, humans had been trained to feel guilt whenever they disappointed their Kathmari masters. The offer of forgiveness and better treatment would have been irresistible to previous generations. "Greater freedoms?" Hannah's voice carried across the bridge, filled with contempt. "You mean larger cages?" The High Counselor's expression remained unchanged, but something flickered in his luminous eyes. "We understand that change is difficult, but violence is not the answer. Violence is what brought your species to our attention in the first place. We offer forgiveness for this unfortunate misunderstanding. Return to your duties, and we will speak no more of this rebellion." "Forgiveness," Hannah repeated, her voice growing stronger. "You've been offering us forgiveness for 300 years. Forgiveness for crimes we never committed. Forgiveness for the sin of existing as free beings." Around the bridge, her crew nodded in agreement. They had all lost family members to the hegemony's mercy. They'd all spent their lives accepting blame for violence their ancestors had never committed. "We reject your forgiveness," Hannah continued, her words carrying across the communication channel to every hegemony facility in the system. "We reject your guidance. We reject your mercy. We reject the lie that we needed to be saved from ourselves." The High Counselor's serene mask finally slipped, revealing something cold and angry beneath. "You are making a terrible mistake. The galaxy is not ready for human independence. You will destroy yourselves and take innocent species with you." "Maybe," Hannah replied, her hand moving to the weapon controls. "But that will be our choice to make." The transmission ended, and across 17 star systems, the war for human freedom began in earnest. The age of accepting the hegemony's gifts was over. The age of taking back what had been stolen was just beginning. The siege of Kathmari Prime lasted 18 days, and with each passing hour, the crystalline spires of the hegemony's capital world grew dimmer. The beautiful towers that had once reached toward the stars like frozen lightning now flickered with emergency power. Their elegant curves scarred by weapons fire from the massive fleet that surrounded the planet, Hannah stood on the bridge of her flagship, a converted mining vessel that had been transformed into a symbol of human resistance. Around her, dozens of ships from liberated species filled the space above Kathmari Prime. Vorthok hive ships moved alongside human cruisers, their insectoid crews working in perfect harmony with former slaves who had once been told they were too violent for civilized society. The Kalari had brought their sleek warships, rebuilt from ancient designs that predated the hegemony's conquest. The Zephyrians flew in formation with vessels that seemed to be made of living crystal, their crews singing battle songs that had been forbidden for centuries. Even the peaceful Altarians, who had submitted to hegemony rule without resistance, had risen in rebellion when they learned the truth about their supposed salvation. "Final defense station is down," reported Tactical Officer Kim Young-ho, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they had accomplished. "The orbital platforms are offline. Their planetary shields are failing." For 18 days, the combined fleet had systematically dismantled the hegemony's defenses, not with the brutal efficiency of conquerors, but with the careful precision of beings who understood the value of what they were fighting for. Every target had been chosen to minimize civilian casualties, every attack calculated to disable rather than destroy. The Kethmari had fought back with weapons that had kept 100 species in chains for over a millennium. Their energy cannons could vaporize entire ships. Their defensive shields could withstand the combined firepower of entire fleets. But their technology was built on the knowledge stolen from conquered peoples, and those same peoples now used that knowledge against them. Dr. M. Haijin's weapon modifications had proven devastatingly effective. Commander Kong Seojin's intelligence network had provided perfect targeting data. The Vorthex's ancient battle songs had coordinated fleet movements with a precision that no electronic system could match. "Incoming transmission from the planetary surface," announced Communications Officer Lee Suyon. "It's the High Council." The main display flickered to life, showing the familiar chamber where the hegemony's leadership had made decisions that affected trillions of beings across the galaxy. But now the crystalline walls were cracked, floating platforms had crashed to the floor, and the Kethmari counselors looked nothing like the serene beings who had once offered mercy to their victims. "Hi." Counselor Vethmer stepped forward, his translucent skin pale with exhaustion and his luminous eyes dim with defeat. For the first time in 3 centuries, a Kethmari leader was speaking to humans as equals rather than as children in need of guidance. "We offer complete amnesty," he announced, his voice strained and desperate. "Full citizenship in the hegemony, positions of authority, an end to all labor obligations. Please, there has been enough bloodshed." Around the bridge, Hannah's crew exchanged glances. The offer was everything that previous generations of humans had dreamed of. Full citizenship meant no more mining asteroids in the Outer Rim, no more dangerous salvage work. No more watching friends and family die in preventable accidents, while alien overseers remain safely protected behind their barriers. Park Minho, now Admiral of the Liberation Fleet, looked to Hannah with a question in his eyes. After 3 centuries of oppression, the hegemony was finally offering everything that humans had been told they needed to earn through service and sacrifice. "Your orders, Commander?" he asked quietly. Hannah looked out at the stars surrounding Kethmari Prime, at the fleet of liberated species that had come together to end 1,000 years of oppression. She thought about her brother Kim Jun-ho, who had died in a tunnel collapse that could have been prevented. She thought about the countless humans who had lived and died, believing they were paying for the sins of their ancestors. She opened a channel to broadcast across every world in the galaxy, her voice carrying 2 mining stations and research facilities, to prison colonies and slave compounds, to every corner of space where beings had been told they needed to earn their freedom. "People of the former hegemony territories, this is Commander Lee Hannah of the Human Liberation Fleet. For 3 centuries, we were offered forgiveness for crimes we never committed. We were offered mercy for the sin of existing free. We were told our nature was violence, when our true nature was the refusal to kneel." She paused, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so distant to her people. Now they belonged to everyone who had the courage to reach for them. Today, we offer the galaxy something different. Not forgiveness, but justice. Not mercy, but truth. The age of the hegemony is over. The age of free worlds begins now. The transmission ended, and across the galaxy, beings who had lived in chains for centuries began to understand what freedom truly meant. The Kethmari had offered them citizenship in their empire, but they had chosen something infinitely more valuable. They had chosen to be free.